Trusty ape. Why am I doing this? Saturday morning, fucking shenanigans. It is balls early, and I'm up. I've decided to torture us all. No, it's good. It's all, it's all good. It's all gravy.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with
spirited, maybe thoughtful. I'm not so sure.
The issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is
maybe on one side
the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his support.
They're the best people to ask because this is right, like New York, California, right? Like, so the worst, absolutely most fucking difficult places to live in the U.S. Represented here on the stage. We talk about like
reporters. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspiration.
That is a non-answer. She's actually not directly answering the question.
The dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
Yeah, no. The second one is true. There is no shortage of homes, right? It's the fact that people can't afford to rent the homes, right? Like, and they're building more of them. Yet people can't inhabit the ones that already exist because they're too expensive.
We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families.
What about single people? Like, they always emphasize the family, but it's not, like, can't you just, like, let single people support themselves?
Of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit.
Because I'll tell you, like, right now, like, we got fucking, 3 grown-ass adults sharing a single-family unit here, and we've got, like, 3 families or 4 families in the unit next door all sharing a single-family unit. So that's how expensive it is.
That we have given in a long time so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them is...
Well, you can get all that shit for free. Like, they have, like, donations for all of those things. But if you can't put the baby in a home, that seems to be a real problem.
Small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000...
Well, my second mother was a state employee who also, like, whatever. Not to get into the specifics of that, but, right, like, working for the state... retired, from a state job and still scraping by paycheck to paycheck.
$1,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before.
And just a non-answer to the fucking question, which, whatever, at least she's, like, proclaiming to have a plan. But, I don't know. So I won't be surprised if I get cut off here. I thought I'd sucked up all my data. What's up, Spooky? Good morning. Your second mother was a baboon. Yeah, that's true. That might have been my third mother. I thought I had sucked up all my data. In fact, my phone company told me as such, but I got cut off from our backstage chat last night and wasn't able to return to StreamYard. So regardless, though, we'll just follow through this as long as possible.
Which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas.
$4,000 a year? Like, that's like less than 2 months' rent here. I mean, I don't even know what the fuck you're even talking about at this point. So I'm not going to talk about what I saw at the McDonald's this morning. I did go to the McDonald's this morning. I bought a breakfast and a coffee. It cost me about eight and some change, like $8.20 for like a biscuit with some eggs, some sausage, and a hash brown. You know, I mean, it's all right. It's not a big breakfast, but
about what should
they call
be
it that.
the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing
I have no sales tax. Good morning, Dave. Good to see you.
tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
Oh, here he goes again. Like he's gonna fucking. We're gonna. The other countries are gonna pay us. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. That's what you said last time. Never happened.
The
Never
tariff will
happened.
be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact,
No,
they
you
never
didn't.
took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have
The middle class, but for every class. No, like, this is complete fucking bullshit. Oh my god.
millions of people pouring into our country from
I know
prisons and
this
jails,
only gets worse, so I'm just gonna try and prepare my brain for what I know is already knows
from
coming.
mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and
Hold on, what? What the fuck did you just say? Hey, good morning, Sandy.
probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions, and
Millions of people pouring into our country from prisons, jails, and mental institutions. You know, I realize, like, we closed our mental institutions, right? We let our own fucking, like, you know, people out onto the street who were in long-term lifetime care, right? We closed down our mental institutions and then put those people out on the street. That was a Reagan fucking job.
insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics.
And they're coming in and they're taking jobs? People from mental institutions? They're taking jobs from... Wow.
And also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And
And unions are going to be affected very soon. Yeah, it started in the 80s. Yeah, and they, like, I think ours in California were some of the last to close. And yeah, a lot of those people account for the homeless people we have on the streets right now.
see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out.
Oh, fear of the immigrants. Yeah, We let them into our country, and now they're taking over towns by force, which just isn't happening, right?
We have to get them out fast. I
Non-fucking
created one of the
issue.
greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and
Oh, he's like, I created one of the greatest economies, and I just, destroyed it in 4 years. Like, that's even fucking possible.
security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about.
Neither of them have actually directly answered the initial question, but that's, whatever.
About what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the...
I think he looks like an actual, like...
Were 4 years ago.
I don't know.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working.
We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got...
He's defending.
I'm going to do cut...
Bringing us together, know we have the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances.
Yep, that sounds about right. In this debate, we're going to hear from the same old tired playbook. From both sides. There were terrible people on both sides. But, lesser of two evils. Definitely Kamala, but having a cat sandwich at the moment.
And name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas.
That was a lie. That was definitely a blatant lie. I think me and never got stuck in the middle of the country.
Some good, some bad, but it makes...
You gotta be left or right. You can't be in the middle.
Makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did.
I saw them drawing up this map where, like, according to, like, some people, it's like more than 70% of the actual land mass of the states is supporting the douchebag on the left here, right? Like, and then it's like, it's all on the fringes, like West Coast and East Coast supporting Democrats right now, which is fairly typical. But yeah, I don't know.
We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the
He
pandemic
just has to keep saying it. We got the greatest economy, the greatest. It's the greatest. We're gonna make it so great. What a fucking phony, dude. Like, anybody who uses fucking language like that, just, I don't know, automatically I'm just like, you're full of shit. Full of shit.
Not since 1917, where 100 million people died,
Not since
has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over.
It's just like make up numbers. It's like billions and billions, 100 million.
Where the economy...
A gazillion.
Stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible.
Wait. Wasn't he pissed off because they were like bringing ventilators in from China because we didn't have enough? Is he saying we made ventilators for the entire world?
And people give me credit for rebuilding
I
the
seem to remember that happening.
military. They give me credit for a
Good
lot of
morning, Silverwolf. Good to see you.
things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does
Presidents don't create jobs. Like, unless you literally employed people yourself, you're full of shit.
everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he...
I somewhat agree with that. I mean, I don't think Trump does have much of a plan. He didn't have much of a plan the first time. Like, you know, he's a whole lot of talk. But I also think that Democrats often fail to deliver on big promises. So, I mean, we're in a bit of a bind there, right? Because that's exactly what the Republicans would argue.
isn't looking out for you.
I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth,
It's
our
brilliant. It's great. It's super genius.
value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan. And it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes.
Run, spot, run. That's a good one. Good job.
She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up.
She said, I don't have a plan, so I'm going to say she doesn't have a plan. I know you are, but what am I?
The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for
I
tariffs.
have a
as you
feeling
pointed
this is
out.
going to be like 2 hours of non-fucking answers and just a lot of deflection. Uh-oh. What happened? Something happened. Yeah, disconnected, reconnected. I don't know. It says I'm still live, so I'll keep going.
Across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever.
None of it was real. There's a lot of sidestepping and body language. I don't know, like, and I think like what Carlin said, like way back in the day was true. This is like a fucking puppet show. Like none of this shit actually matters. It just, it doesn't actually make a difference. It's just all show for us.
China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country.
Only inflation of my ego.
because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
Cereal, bacon, eggs, other breakfast commodities?
People of our country are...
Actually, eggs are pretty expensive out here, which is funny because we're one of the #1 exporters of eggs, but wherever things come in abundance and we like sell them to other people, we have to pay like, extra for them. Like we've got shit tons of eggs, shit tons of cheese, and we have to pay out the ass for it, like way more than other people, right? And we produce the stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about California here, specifically.
They've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Cereal's cheap, though. I can get cereal for pretty decent prices.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard
but I never eat cereal, so it doesn't really make a difference to me.
There, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them.
American chips? What, are we Frito-Lay? Are we talking about computer chips? I'm not sure.
Improve and modernize their military. Basically sold us out.
Okay, I'm going to assume we're talking about like computer chips here or something.
Policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support...
Well, that would actually... require funding scientists, right? Like, people who actually study, like manufacturing has very little, if anything, to do with that, right? You actually need to fund the scientists behind those projects.
America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed.
Them, othering. It's othering language. You don't say her because she's never been the president, but then later on he's gonna accuse her of actually like being Biden. Microchips, yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's going to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor.
She's a Marxist. I love it. He's like bringing up like full-on anti-communist rhetoric.
In economics. And he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people.
I believe 21 million people. He's just pulling numbers out of his ass. It's interesting. I was reading about this recently because this is very similar to what is going on in certain countries in Europe, right? Where they either make up wholesale these immigration numbers when it's not happening, right? Or at the very least, like drastically inflate it to make immigration a central problem, which is just another form of fear mongering, right? It's like, and Trump's been doing this like his whole career, like build the wall and all that bullshit. There was never an immigration problem to the scale that he paints it, right? And he just keeps like bolstering on that when it's been clearly disproven.
15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were
Oh
able to
boy, here we go. This is going to be a doozy.
kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote,
Trump's a Floridian? I thought he was like a New Yorker. He just said his home state is Florida. See, that's how much I really give a fuck about Trump.
going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of...
They just don't. This is just a flat out fucking lie that they keep on pushing. Nobody is doing fucking full-term abortions. It's a bunch of bullshit. It's the only spot where he actually pissed her off. Okay.
West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job. But the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical.
Yeah, I was a New Yorker until he moved down to Mar-a-Lago or whatever.
Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me.
Democrats killing babies. Yep.
Hence the vote.
That's what happens. Yeah.
But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the
Communists for cannibalism, yeah.
Genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for
Is he touting his loaded Supreme Court now?
Incest and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able
What
to
I
get
find
it.
funny, too, is because I'm from the punk rock, side, and so back in the day, they had all these bands that were totally anti-Reagan. And a lot of those same people now would support Trump. But Trump is basically a reboot of Reagan.
And now
in a lot of ways.
Are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give
I've actually heard pro-choice activists say that Roe v. Wade was not the best decision, but it was the best thing they could do at the time. I don't know. I haven't read into it a great deal. I just know that as far as turning it back, and not having anything in place, just kind of created this basically anarchy in the system around that. I think South refuses to claim this in Florida. If you don't like it, move. Yeah. Love it or leave it. heard that.
Discredit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President,
I love how she just corrected it right there. She was like, there's no state in this country where it's legally killed. Duh. Fuck. That was great.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral.
Yeah. I mean, that's about as clear cut as you get. Like, it is. It's immoral and disgusting. And the fact that people have to either go to, like, you know, basically back to like this, like back alley abortions, getting illegal abortions or whatever, right? Or they have to travel to another state, right, in order to get those services. Is just like, it's fucking mind blowing. Like, this is some like 19th century shit.
One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care.
Unfortunately, I think this is really why he holds so much sway with the Christians in this country. Like, that was his one, like, big move for those pro-life conservative Christians, right? That, like, put them behind him.
Emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President.
It's interesting because I've looked into this, like, Project 2025 a little bit, and he maintains like this distance between himself and it, like some plausible deniability or whatever. But all the people who wrote it, right, have him in mind, and they all support him, right? So it's like, of course, you know, he's going to follow that directive.
Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a
It's
ban,
a lie.
and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that
I
nobody
didn't do
thought was...
anything to tear the country apart, right? It just made a bunch of people, right, conservative Christians, really, really mad, right? Because they can control other people. Like, that's all it is. It's all about one class trying to control another class, and you know, it's crazy.
Possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban. But it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to
Well, I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me?
I wouldn't be so sure about that. I would not be so sure about that. It's like my country very much right now. Yeah, I've thought about leaving it. Oh, that's horrible shit.
Reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way.
Says the man who spends all his fucking time on golf courses.
Now, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because
What the fuck
me,
do student loans have to do with abortion at all? Like, that's just complete.
J.D. Vance
That's great.
said
That's crazy.
that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers.
Right, so they can't get in vitro either?
To go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America...
Well, you're talking to a person that has no conscience, so it's not going to be a power play.
The majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that.
Now, how does that make you lead anything? You saw it, so therefore you led?
And everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
He just keeps saying it over and over again. It doesn't make it true, right? It's like, oh yeah, if you just keep repeating the same lie over and over again, it suddenly becomes true. We the people didn't get to vote on it. Yeah, the elected clowns voted.
Okay, would you do that?
Very true, Sandy. Very true.
Why don't you answer the question, would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v. Wade,
answer the question, would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the ninth
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president that puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
That was actually good. Go to his rallies, listen to what he says. Anything would help instead of nothing. Yeah, fentanyl's a terrible, terrible thing. It's yeah, I don't know. His Lutheran, she's clearly never been to a Trump rally.
To respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to...
I've seen some clips where he does just go off on, like, wacky tangents. Yeah, I've heard that they're sticking the fentanyl in basically everything. Or if not, like, they're reusing the packaging so that it just happens to be in the same packaging as other drugs and stuff. It's dying from pre-rolled and blunts. Shit.
Kill that bill, and successfully so. That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. what they have done to our
What the fuck is that? It happened 3.5 years ago, and it's a failing nation. We're gonna go into World War III.
country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over
Pretty sure immigration didn't cause any world wars.
the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's
I love how
happening
she's like fucking actually laughing at him.
in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
There's like this whole air of fatalism, like, you know, and both of them do it, but Trump is really bad about it. He's like, oh, like this one person is going to single-handedly destroy the entire country. Like, the pills that look just like Oxy 80s, and they're playing Russian roulette.
I just want to.
But Resolute Germ, if you're talking about like some single isolated incident, and I've heard about this, it's like a single group of immigrants that, anyway, yeah, it's just it's essentially a non-issue. Like, you can find U.S. citizens doing that shit too, right? It's just not making the news.
Bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Right. So they're saying it's not true.
Let me just say here, this is
The people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what
No evidence.
you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this
Hey, good morning, Todd. Good to see you.
election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And
I don't know if I want anything Dick Cheney has to offer, but that's fine.
if you
whatever.
want to really know
I guess she's just saying that it's like bipartisan.
the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States.
That's true.
His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when
See, no, I think all that's like a step too far, right? I think the republic will survive just fine, regardless of one of these two. It's just a matter of how much more fucking turmoil we have to endure. Like, just complete insanity.
we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people.
I fired. He said it at the same time. He fired those people so they weren't exactly trustworthy. Yeah. The system is working as it should and must be stopped. Versus the system is broken and must be fixed. Yeah, I definitely think the system is broken, but I don't know about their way of going about fixing it, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I think either way you choose, right? The system is going to endure doing what it's doing as long as we're choosing a candidate from either of these parties. But I think one is clearly less dangerous to our the personal divisions amongst us, right? One is going to cause more internal division.
So graciously, they did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people.
You're fired. Yeah, that's what you do. If you have an employee you disagree with, you fire them.
Who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed, and I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire them.
See, and that kind of shows you, like, the way he'd run a business and the way he runs the country in this way is like, okay, so you're not actually taking any corrective measures. You're just going to fire the person who you think does a disservice to you, right? There's no, and like, if you did that to everybody, you would eventually, have, you'd have no employees, right? Like, at some level, you have to be ready to take people with their shortcomings and then retrain them, right? Make them more effective.
And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But
Your sister wrote a book about you, though. I'm a conservative leftist, or is a leftist conservative? Yeah, they just call that centrist. You just be a centrist. I'm okay with internal division with commies. Uh-oh.
have done such a poor job, and they never fire
Marxists.
anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation.
I prefer the term socialist, but that's fine.
They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president.
Everything is, fucking never mind.
In history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to
this. Is painful. This is really painful. I don't know how much further we're going to make it. Hey, good morning. Good night. Good to see you. I'm a socialist. Well, I support the Democratic Socialists. Yeah.
Deportation.
But I don't align with them on all issues. I don't align with any one party. Like I said, I'm an anarchist as well as an extreme one, kind of. All right. Well, that's interesting.
Proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like
street criminals as opposed to your billionaire criminal Wall Street friends.
Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it. Because
see, a lot of the rhetoric on the stage, like, and she's participating in it too, to an extent. But, Trump is extremely guilty of it. It should be fucking illegal, right? It's like some of the shit that they do, like to try and like she's personally overseeing fucking immigration, right? If any of that shit were true, which is clearly, you know, fanciful, but right, that would be an issue for the INS, right? And Border Patrol. You'd be blaming those people.
They're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all
The
over
fabric of our country. Our country isn't made of fabric.
the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a...
I don't think that's actually true. Can always be a part of the land they want. It's a win-win. She doesn't run INS and Border Patrol. That's a falsehood. They don't know.
new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse
President
me,
Harris,
the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for...
This later. All right. Let's see you talk. Thanks for coming by.
national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next...
Leslie Germ says they both report to the executive branch. Yeah, but they don't directly oversee the operations.
big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are...
Yeah, I think it's good she's on point, that she keeps bringing it back to the actual issues at hand, though. Gonna bow out. Go get shit done. All right. Thank you, Sandy. Have a good day yourself.
are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court...
Oh, she's not denying it. She's not denying it.
...recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice
to
President
stop
Harris.
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk.
Oh, no. A bullet to the head. It grazed my ear.
About democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get-
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history.
Thanks for coming by, Resolute Dream. All right, yeah, I'll check it out. I haven't been over at Gorilla's channel in a while.
Because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teen. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work.
And once again, I think it's just like a non-starter. Like they keep thinking we're just gonna build more homes. Like at least here, it's not a problem of needing more homes. They're building more homes, and we still have more homes that are unoccupied. People can't afford to rent them, right? So you either have to bring down the rent or increase the wages. Like building more homes doesn't help.
That is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my
Jeez.
focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that
That's actually a good point.
president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response?
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised.
Billions and billions of dollars.
So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff
She was against defund the police? I think you
up
misspoke there.
very wrongly, very horribly. And
I mean, I don't think she was ever on the side of defund the police, but
everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Wow.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical...
oh, okay. Transgender operations on illegal aliens in prison.
The left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take...
By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but I actually don't like it.
400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get to.
environment,
We're
as she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election
Wow. Just random tangent. I was listening at the window.
in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a core.
Free transgender surgeries for immigrants in prison. Yeah, no, yeah, the prison health care. Yeah, it's definitely a hot button issue.
Cornerstone of our democracy and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
That's a good one. And I think I may stop there. Yeah, lock him up just for that. I mean, for the January 6th insurrection. I think that should be a. I like that movie, The Secret of Nim. That he should be jailed for that, but of course, they'll never get him on that. So into the back, the green that saves my sanity. Enjoy. Yeah. I'm not doing any of that until possibly after this month. I've got to pass a drug test here in a week or so. But anyway, that'll be fine. Okay, this has been your insanity for Saturday morning. We may return to this at a later time. I don't know. We'll see. I think it's all downhill from here, right? But I do kind of want to hear his defense for January 6th. And so we'll see if he even addresses that at some point here in the near future. But yeah, I got to go get ready for my Saturday here. It's going to be another eventful one. And just breathe. It's all going to be okay. Regardless of what they say, nobody's destroying the country. Although they may be wreaking havoc on our sanity. So, yeah, careful. All right. Glad to hear that, Sandy. So, yes, everybody enjoy the rest of your day. And as I always say at the end of every stream, much love, be well, and stay trusty. And see you later.